Hi guys, my name's Bronte and I'm a UQ Master of Dietetics student. So recently I undertook a placement in Mount Isa for my community and public health nutrition placement, and I spent my time there with the Centre for Rural and Remote Health, and I worked with the Murrubai and Nugathati Murri Women's Group there to develop a culturally relevant and appropriate nutrition program with the women there to understand the best methods of nutrition intervention delivery. In our kind of day-to-day experience, we also worked with a lot of allied health professionals, so that was also an amazing aspect of it as well. One of the best parts about going to Mount Isa for me was all the things that you can see and all the people that you meet. So because you're living with a group of other students, you instantly kind of break down those barriers and become really good friends with everyone. It was one of the most amazing times of my life. It was an experience that I will never forget. It has helped me grow as a person and it's helped me grow as a professional. And I am forever grateful that I had the opportunity to go. I would love to say thank you for receiving the Going Rural bursary to allow me to go to Mount Isa and participate in this placement. And I encourage everyone else to consider going rural for one of your placements. Thanks to everyone for watching this video and I hope you enjoy.
Thanks, Bronte. That was fantastic. Every time I watch that, it makes me want to go on placement. I think an important kind of starting point here is to talk about interprofessional collaborative practice. And Kirsten, I want to bring you in here if I could, because I know that Health Workforce Queensland and Southern Queensland Rural Health share a commitment to this. And could you just take the students through what we mean by that and why it's so important in a rural setting?
Yeah, thanks, Meredith. So hi, everyone. My name is Kirsten. I'm a clinical educator with Southern Queensland Rural Health. I'm based out in Charleville, so nice and remote. And my position with Southern Queensland Rural Health is an allied health clinical educator. I'm a dietitian by trade, so really found your presentation and video really interesting, Bronte, because it's a big passion area of mine, working in rural and remote communities. So as Meredith said, at Southern Queensland Rural Health, we have a very big passion for interprofessional practice, and sometimes we've got it kind of on a loop as well. So for those of you who don't know what interprofessional practice is, so interprofessional practice is when we learn with and from and about each other. So really coming together as a team and learning each other's roles and really kind of bringing that whole picture together. So we're not working in silos, we're coming together, and is a very important part of that interprofessional collaboration and that team is the patient, their family and their carers. So previously we might have missed a very important part of the care team, which is the patient and their families and their communities that surround them. And interprofessional practice really brings them to the forefront. And there's a few competencies that we look at when we're talking about interprofessional practice, and a few things is a collaborative leadership, conflict resolution, role clarification and team functioning, which is all kind of interpinned with really strong communication across the board. So it takes us away from working in our silos. So I don't work in just my dietitian silo. I'm working with all the other professions to come up with a common goal for the patient that the patient is taking ownership of, and it's something that they really want to be involved with. Where if we look at, like, I suppose, multidisciplinary teams, which has been kind of the buzzword for probably the previous 10 years or more, we're still kind of working fairly siloed and not really involving the patient so much in that care. So there's kind of being a big switch, and I could probably rattle on about this stuff all day. I did a 6-hour workshop with some students today, so it's very much on my forefront. It's something we're very passionate with and can see it starting to infiltrate, especially through our university courses. Most courses are doing something on interprofessional education, and then it's starting to seep into our healthcare teams and hospitals and community health centres too, which is really exciting to see.
Thanks, Kirsten. Andrew, I'd like to turn to you next. You're a fourth year OT student with the University of the Sunshine Coast, and you did a 10-week placement in Kingaroy in a private practice. I think there were quite a few things throughout that practice that, well, opportunities that came your way. Do you want to share what they were with the students?
Yeah, definitely. I think I wasn't as far out as a lot of other people were. I think, I was only about maybe 3.5, 4 hours away from the Sunshine Coast from where I'm at. So it was good. We got to go back home on the weekends sometimes and stuff, which was nice. But as far as the placement experience went, every occupational therapy student that I've met, I've highly recommended that they try and go for one of those rural generalist placements. It's just incredible, especially as a student, to just see that full breadth of OT, where 1 hour you're in a hand therapy session, and then the next hour it's mental health, and then the next hour, you're playing games and using that therapeutic use of self in a pediatric section. I think it really, for me, showed me the really broad scope of OT and really helped inform for me what areas of OT I really am interested in pursuing into the future. And I think definitely being a generalist OT is one of them. It really feels like, it keeps you on your toes and it keeps everything exciting when you're doing a little bit of everything.
Yes, I think that's one of the, universally what we hear from students about their rural placements is the scope of practice. The opportunities that come their way are just outstanding, and the capacity for communities, for your health professionals to support you in that and your learning is amazing as well. Shamama, you're a fourth year speech pathology student. You study at UQ.
Yeah.
And you did an 8-week placement last year with the Bush Kids in Emerald. And I know that you had a lot of hopes before you went out on placement. And there were also some uncertainties. Can you describe for us, what those uncertainties were and whether they lived up to your expectations when you went on placement?
So, if it isn't obvious, I'm a short, young, visibly Muslim woman. So I obviously had quite a few uncertainties about things like my safety, things like how would I fit in, how would my clinical educator be, how would my workplace be, and if it's going to be supportive towards me and who I am as a person. I found that in general, a lot of the people were very welcoming and very supportive and very nice. And if they ever felt like they didn't really know anything about me or my identity or about me being Muslim, they were very supportive in that they would always ask me questions like, okay, what is this about? What is this about? I remember the first day that I went there, I had a really long conversation with I think the receptionist. We just went off to lunch and just had a really nice conversation about, about our lives, how different it might be, but really I really just saw that they were making the effort to be very welcoming towards me. Besides that, I did have a few comments here and there from maybe, for example, someone randomly in the community, or maybe one of the parents of my clients. But on the whole, I felt very supported, and I found that within the community that I was in Emerald, there was quite a lot of diversity. So you'd have quite a lot of people who are from all different backgrounds and Asian backgrounds. So someone who's more South Asian like me, or someone from Southeast Asia or East Asia. So it never really felt like I was just there on my own. if that makes sense.
Yeah.
Mhm.
And do you think that, you know, at the end of the placement, do you think it made you feel stronger as a person that you rose to those challenges?
Yeah, I mean, to be honest, the problems that I had were more about finding a place to stay, figure out how I'm going to get there in the first place, and groceries. And didn't really felt much like my identity really factored into that. And I could really just focus on the important part and actually providing therapy.
Yeah. Yeah, and that was also, I remember you wanted to have some experience with Indigenous health, which was part of what happened on your placement, which was, you know, important to you. Lox, I wanted to come to you next because you've obviously had placements as a student, but you now work in St George with Vital Health. Do you want to just give a little bit of an overview of what you know, what your work circumstances are now, and then we'll talk about, you know, and do you supervise students?
Yeah, supervise. Yeah, sorry, just to continue on from you, Meredith. Yeah, so work in Brisbane and work in St George. So do a bit in both locations for 2 different companies, and yeah, supervise students in both locations. Yeah, so a couple of days a fortnight out here, and then the back end of the weeks back in Brisbane. So yeah, been doing this for a little while now, and yeah, it's definitely changed the way I practice as an EP. Yeah.
So as an exercise physiologist.
Yeah.
So you had placements as a student. What do you recall from those placements? I think you had, was it Rockhampton and
Charleville was the other one.
Yep, that's right. Sorry. Yeah. How did those placements incentivize you to go rural?
Yeah, massively. Like I'd say, probably reflecting on them now, if you look back at the opportunities I got, especially with the supervisors. So even in Brisbane now as a sort of supervisor and working now, I don't really have time. I have a little bit of time and stuff. So, and obviously give that to students where necessary. But when I'm here in St George, I've just got so much more time to give back to a student, and so you get just so much more opportunity, you know, to pick their brains and stuff like that. And you know, that was the same when I was a student in both Rocky and Charleville. Yeah, you got to talk to the practice supervisors a hell of a lot more than in Brisbane, and yeah, you learn heaps off them. And then yeah, just following on from that sort of the multidisciplinary practice stuff. So a lot of the time you'll find placement sites in Brisbane, they're fairly narrow scope, like they might have 1 or 2 disciplines working for them. But you know, in a lot of the rural settings, they're across the board. And I found, again, as a student, you just got to find out what each discipline did, how they worked, and then that helped me a lot when I finished work. And so, you know, when I had someone in front of me and they'd just seen the OT, I had a pretty good idea of what the OT was working on and working towards and how they went about their business. And it really just opened up things a lot for me.
I know that we've got, there's a question, Lox, were you fly in, fly out of St George, or were you there servicing other areas?
So yeah, fly in, fly out at the moment. And then I'll do one day, I'll head north to Surat, which is about an hour away. As a student. So as a student, I wasn't really in St George so much. But if you were a student in St George, depending on who you were with, you probably would do a bit of outreach. So towns like, I'm assuming that's Dirranbandi, which is about an hour away. And you'd probably go to other small towns around. So outreach is usually whether that's, whether at your hospital or private practice, you might do 1 or 2 days of outreach or trips to properties and stuff like that for people that can't get into town. So usually most towns like Charleville's the same, Roma's the same. You've always got little towns that surround the main hub, and they need to be serviced, I guess, just as much as the town you're centred in.
And I think part of the flexibility of rural placements is that, you have a say in, talking to your supervisor about those kind of opportunities outside of, the sort of primary placement venue location, because there are so many opportunities that come your way to, experience different types of practice, as you say, Logs. I know we've got quite a few first year students in the room, so I'm just going to open the floor to you guys, asking any questions you might have of the speakers here. No, you're going to stay quiet. Okay, that's fine. Joe, let's talk a little bit about your placement and how that, what that involved and where that led you in terms of getting a job, because I think that's an important part of rural placements, is that it often does lead into employment. Do you want to just give it your story of that to the students, please?
Yes, yeah, absolutely. So I wanted to do my placement in Yarrabah as a social work student. We had 500 hours to complete, bearing in mind that there was Aboriginal communities have a number of extra public holidays. Also that we're in the we have a wet season up here, so the roads, because it's over a range, the roads often get blocked and you can't get in. So it was extended to about 4 months. I was going in and out of Yarrabah. For me, there's nowhere to stay in Yarrabah, no accommodation, because it's an Aboriginal community. So the closest place to stay would be heading out into the Cairns region. So that drive out was a challenge, was one of my challenges. It's about an hour drive each way over ranges and whatnot. So it does get quite tricky. So doing the placement out there, getting in and out, it was a long placement, but it was an amazing placement, obviously, because I've stayed. And once you get in there and you get to see some of the needs, and as well as some of the absolute beauty of the region and the people, it just really connected with me. And if I hadn't had that placement experience, I wouldn't know. Actually, I probably not even sure if I'd be working in Aboriginal health at all. So the placement really opened my eyes to the experience and what connected me to that particular area of work. And now I just love it, and it's where I'm going to stay for quite some time. So I believe that working into some of the Indigenous communities, it is hard to retain staff, usually because they're very difficult to get to, and there's it's a bit of a drive for most of them if you're staying in the town outside of the Aboriginal, outside the communities. So it is hard to retain staff. So if you go in and you're happy and you find it's a match for you, doing a placement there will introduce you to that. Also build your skills, because absolutely everywhere you come across people with Indigenous backgrounds all across Australia. And whilst communities are different, you will learn some skills that will carry across all your practices. So it is quite a valuable experience, even if you don't go into working in that field wholly. So yeah, my experience was great. I was not jotting down some notes as well. There was one thing I can do as a tip for anyone going into communities, particularly Aboriginal communities, every day go down to the local coffee shop and get your coffee, because that's where I met most of my people. And they weren't just, oh, who's this white person in our community? they got to see me every day and then know my name and knew that what coffees I liked and had a good yarn in that sort of social setting, and it really opened things up for me in terms of being accepted in community. It's a silly thing to think about, but it actually is a good way to connect. I mean, I imagine it's in any community, but yes, in these little communities, it's really my top tip. So,
Jo, I think I can concur with that point. We were joking. One of our Toowoomba colleagues was out today, and we said it might only take 4 minutes to get to work of a morning, and I live on the complete opposite end of Charleville to our office, but it takes you a good 15 minutes at the coffee shop, so you still need to counteract that into, because that's where you meet everybody. Similar to my experience working in bigger hospitals, that's where you found everyone was at the coffee cart or the coffee van at the hospital. It's the same wherever you go, so it's a great place to meet people, and they will get to know you pretty quickly. And I think something just on that note, don't be kind of a little bit put off if someone kind of knows that you're coming, like, oh, you're the new OT student, or oh, you're the new speech student, we heard someone was coming, because that's how they often they recognize students are coming, and they get to know them, and they really value the input that students play in the community. So they do know, and they're like, oh, so you're the new such and such. I still get called the new Jess, and I've been in my job for over 12 months now. Jess is just left a good 18 months ago. So that's how people might recognize you to start with. But yeah, definitely the coffee shop is the place to be.
You're right, Kirsten. I mean, you are so welcomed by community. I mean, like, it's just a massive appreciation society of, that, and I think it just makes an enormous difference to understanding the need within a community, because I think perhaps it was you, Andrew, that you had the experience when you went to on placement, that you really got how they were short-staffed. And whilst that was a challenge, it was also an opportunity for you to step up. And so I think experiencing, the appreciation for, incoming or potential future workforce makes a big difference. I'm also interested to ask those of you who have experience of supervision, what are the things that you think would advantage, students who have yet to go on placement or are coming up to another placement? What are you looking for as a supervisor? What kind of makes a difference?
I'm happy to kick off, Meredith, if you like. I think one thing is be prepared. I know it sounds silly, but one thing I really value as a supervisor across my career is students that come having read a little bit about the community, have a bit of understanding of the health needs maybe of the community or what the service offers. So not just rocking up on your first day kind of going, oh, so what's a caseload maybe, like what type of patients do we get, like having a bit of a look if it's a private practice, having a bit of a look at the website, seeing what they offer. For a health service, just having a bit of a look at what type of professions do they have there, how big is the hospital in terms of the bed numbers, and a big thing is just how far away is it from the metro sites. So out here in Charleville, we're a good 10.5-hour drive from Brisbane, 7.5-hour drive from Toowoomba. Sometimes students don't understand the breadth of that distance, and just knowing that it's a smaller service out here, and the need for patients to be transferred back to those larger sites as well. I think another thing is contact your supervisor early, kind of as soon as you know where you're going on placement, get in contact, flick them an email, introduce yourself. Say, hi, I'm Kirsten, I'm coming out placement in a couple of months or weeks, really excited to get out there. Is there any resources that I should read beforehand? What type of patients might I come across? Just so you've kind of got that upper hand of what you're coming out to see, and then you can feel a little bit more prepared in your own thing. I think a big thing in terms of self-care and looking after yourself, have a look what social activities are on. We often send our students emails. Hi guys, the races are on in Roma next weekend. Everyone head up for a road trip. Just so you've got some things planned, especially I know Andrew was saying he was a bit closer to Brizzy, so he could duck home back to the Sunshine Coast. He could duck home on weekends, but somewhere like out of Charleville, you're not getting home and back in a weekend. So having a look at what's around. Even though they're small communities, they often have a lot of things on. So check for your sporting clubs. If you're a basketball player or a netballer, a footy player, have a look, have a Google, have a search on the Facebook page or the local community directory, buy, swap, sell type pages. They're a really good source of knowledge. And if you even just post on one of those, hey guys, I'm coming out for a placement. I'll be out in Charleville for 8 weeks. Is there any netball or touch footy on? A big thing is in most Queensland rural communities, rugby league is life. If you're over here over summer, learn how Brisbane Broncos are going on the ladder, especially if you're in the lower half. I assume it's the Cowboys if you're up in northern Queensland, because it is the perfect conversation starter with anyone. Football or the weather, you'll fit right in. So yeah, that's probably the biggest thing. I think contact your supervisor early, contact your University Department of Rural Health. So down in Southern Queensland, that's us here at Southern Queensland Rural Health, and then we've got the Centre for Rural and Remote Health from that Marie discussed earlier for the higher part of the state as well. But yeah, just embrace it, I think, is the biggest thing. Just be ready for a challenge. Challenge yourself.
Fox, do you want to add to that?
Yeah, just 2 points from me. Kirsten's pretty much covered all.
Sorry.
No. Well, no, glad you did. Yeah, so like maybe once you get there, if you're still searching for something like whether it's a social sport or an activity, a lot of the time if you talk to people, even your own patients, just in general conversation, they'll be very likely to try and link you up with people in the community. Often you'll find that people are very helpful and want to help you in a lot of ways. So those conversations with people once you get there, I think are really beneficial. And then depending on the location and obviously resources, and if you've got time, visiting that location before you go there would eliminate, I feel, a lot of barriers. And it's just embracing the town and spending a night there. And look, that's not achievable for everyone, I understand. But if you are really concerned about that location that you're going to, that's what I would suggest to any future students who are going to go on a rural placement.
And I think the community knows that rural healthcare is in dire straits of more clinicians, so we need more. So they welcome students with open arms. Anything they can do to convince a student that living out west, up north, away from the coast is the way of life, they will do it. So if it is letting you know when volleyball is on, anything, where to get the best coffee, where there's always like a sneaky where to buy cheap fruit and veg or something like that around, they will let you know because they want you to stay.
There's quite a lot of discussion in the chat about navigating family and placements. I think it would be great if we spend a few minutes talking about that. Obviously, it's a struggle for those of you who are studying and who've got family and partners, and how you navigate that. Nathan, I'm going to put you on the spot, but I know that this is a massive issue for many students. But I think you're a good person to speak to that.
Yeah.
Yeah, you are.
What would you like me to?
I think just to describe, let's just talk about what are the difficulties here. It's not, I guess we make the assumption students going on placement are single, they've got no ties.
Yeah,
it's all good, but it's not. That's not how it is.
Yeah. So I guess my situation is that I'm a mature age student. I've been to uni before with another degree, worked in that career, and I've now come back to health as a OT student. So I have a wife, I've got 3 kids, 2 of those have got special needs, which makes rural living a little bit difficult, which we have done for many years. We've lived rurally, but we're now on the Sunshine Coast. And in terms of placement, our placements are 10-week placements. And so what our thought is, we would like to go rural for that placement, or I would like to go rural for the placements. So our hope is that we're able to take the kids out of school, move them into a local school, wherever that may be, so that, you know, we can basically move there as a family for that 10-week placement, rather than me being out west somewhere or up north, wherever it may be, and the family being here on the Sunshine Coast. So, and with that, my wife, she also works fly in, fly out. She's a doctor working with RFDS up in Mount Isa. So we sort of got to somehow fit that in the mix as well. So yeah, there's a lot of difficulties. Like, as I said, we've lived rurally for a lot of the last 10 years. And yeah, we love it. We love the smaller communities. We find being on the Sunshine Coast that it's incredibly busy. You don't really get to know people all that well. So yeah, we're sort of biding our time until we can fly the coop and head off, which for us, it might be 10 years before we can actually live permanently rurally again, until the kids are through high school, just because of their complexities. But yeah, basically, as soon as we possibly can, we intend on heading bush. And I think, as Andrew was saying, in terms of the placements, working rurally, you get to work in so many different little areas and pick up so much more skill based than what you would just working in the city. When my wife was a junior doctor, we lived in Mount Isa for a period of time, and the opportunities she got out there were enormous, fantastic. So much more than she ever would have gotten in the city.